Hello, folks. So there's another story I want to talk about now, and that's the Dark Data saga. And this is more of just an interesting one to talk about. I talked before in the story video about like I always wanted the Omniverse to have engaging plot lines and stories that produced a sense of continuity for the characters. That was always very important to me. Is that like an ending needs continuity. We need to tie things up from the beginning to the end. And that's why I was always very like, please guys, reconsider switching characters. There are many benefits to long-term things rather than just the shiny new anime tits character that you saw. And at one point, one of our staff members decided to step up and run probably the most ambitious story-based saga, the Dark Data saga. And when I say saga, this is a carryover from back when it was Dragon Ball Z sides. On site, I used the phrase storyline, and I should still continue to use that. But old habits die hard. So the Dark Data storyline had some really cool ideas in it. It was based on the Mega Man Battle Network storyline, where there were dark chips that you could use and you could get powers from, but they would add to your corruption and potentially make your character go evil, if I remember correctly. And so there were some amazing ideas in here. I think it was at least 6 verses were involved. So parties split up into these different areas, and people went off and would get story updates as it progressed. And at first, everything was going great. But unfortunately, I think Fails might have been a little bit overambitious. I wasn't super active at this time. I don't remember when it started. But it got to a point where we got to about a year into the saga. And that's when I started to think, I started to look a bit more closely and be like, what's going on here? And I looked at the rate of updates, and some of these people had been waiting like 2 months for an update. And their characters were just in stasis. Some of these motherfuckers only had like 1 or 2 characters. I think some of them had 1 character when they started, and then were like allowed to take a second character either because they hit the correct threshold, or just because they donated so that they could do something while waiting. These motherfuckers were maxing out on rested experience. And it was at this like post-year mark, I think, that I stepped in and I said to Fails, do you need help? Because, like, obviously that's not good to keep people waiting that long. And I began to step in and write updates for this as well. There were several other people helping to write updates, helping to run things. And things did start to pick up. But I think Fails was having a lot of problems in his real life, and that had spread over to this. And unfortunately, the thing was just fucking dragging on. Which was a real shame, because it was like really ambitious and really cool. Lots of really cool ideas in there. But it got to the point where Alex wanted to run Dante's Abyss, and the Dark Data saga was still going on. So it was like, are we going to run 2 sagas simultaneously, and people who are in the Dark Data saga aren't going to be able to? And eventually it was just kind of like, yeah, okay, because people really want it, and Alex really wants to run this Dante's Abyss. I guess we'll do it. And I think I'm going to talk about Dante's Abyss in another video, the Lost Dante's Abyss, because that was an interesting one. But the interesting fucking thing was that despite saying that he didn't have the motivation to write, didn't have the motivation to do updates for a saga, Fails, once he joined Dante's Abyss, this motherfucker was writing several posts a day. He switched to a new character. And this motherfucker made like 20,000 raw omnilium by the end of it from from just posting so much. He was on lightning, so none of us had any idea how he managed to do this and yet not be able to write updates for Dark Data with people waiting months. And unfortunately, after the explosion, I was told that some people had been told that the reason for the lack of updates was that I was putting pressure on Fails to finish these plot lines when I hadn't actually stepped in until the full year mark, and frankly, I probably should have stepped in sooner. Like, like that was my fault for actually not stepping in sooner. I will own that. And when I did step in, it wasn't to apply pressure. It was to say, like, listen, mate, do you need help? Like, I will support this. Obviously, I was supporting of this from the beginning. I think, like, maybe the pressure was from me supporting it in the beginning. Me saying, hey, I really support this. This is a good idea. But it was Fails who had the idea and chose to run it and wanted to run it. So I don't know if I can really be held responsible. But anyway, I don't think the thing ever actually ended in the end. It may have done, but I don't think it did. I think it just kind of petered out. And a lot of people who had characters stuck in there just kind of switched out. And that sucked. But it had some great ideas. And there was an interesting kind of... It was just an interesting thing. So I'll leave that video there. And the next one I'll be talking about is Dante's Abyss.